Greetings and salutations. Hi, Graeme.
Greetings, Doru. Good to see you again.
It's a privilege, my privilege, to be able to speak to you once again. I noticed there's a lot of interest on YouTube.
Encouraging.
There has been a lot of activity, as in people watching the videos, and I'm certain they got stunned because last week we didn't have conversation, which is encouraging. It's very encouraging, and once again, I express my gratitude personally and on behalf of well, those who enjoy watching us.
The honor and privilege is mine, Doru.
Now, because of weather conditions here, and my internet is wireless, and when it's windy, apparently the waves move are gone with the wind.
Okay.
Okay. I won't be opening other windows, so people who already know where to find our conversations, the recordings of our conversations, of course, don't need this kind of introduction, and I apologize for those who are new to this conversation. I'll put the links when the recording is up, if it's difficult for them to find our previous encounters. So again, a privilege to have Dr. Graeme Finlay talking to us via me. So I'm the main beneficiary, and it's a privilege once again to be able to speak to you, to interact with you. The pretext of our conversations, it's quite blessed. Just a bit of recap. Graeme published in the ISCAS journal Christian Perspectives on Science and Technology 4 articles in the last couple of years. And the latest article, The Primal Testament, Parallels Between Evolutionary and Biblical History, is appended by a poem, his own poem, where he undertook to set out something like a narrative of everything. I like to call it so, and it is, because it addresses the history of creation, or creation as history, where the universe is an evolving reality, and as we've seen in the previous 2 conversations, while from a distance, the distance of objectivity, we might say, well, it's all random and we are here just, it's a happenstance. Graeme was able to plant certain seeds of theology or theological discourse in this narrative, some pointers that show how we Christians, believers, might interact with the scientific worldview without causing any kind of violation to either our Christian convictions and to sound, rigorous science. Yeah.
Yep, all good.
All good. Okay, so I won't be using the website once again. I apologize, but it's windy, and when it's windy, the internet in Sydney is blown away by the wind. Okay, so we are moving now closer to home, although the universe is our home, isn't it?
Yeah.
After we did a bit of stellar physics,
That's right.
let's get closer to where we are, to the Earth. And if you'd be so kind, Graeme, to read again the stanza, so page 120 at the bottom.
Thank you, Doru. Yes, we're moving, as you say, to something a little more familiar. But up till now, it's just been high energy physics, about which I know nothing, but now we're coming to chemistry. So we're starting to think about this little speck of cosmic grit that is planet Earth. Around a star condensing, in its accretion disk, planets, rocks or gas globes, elliptically whisk. Many planets orbit in the Goldilocks zone, but are UV scorched without a layer of ozone. Many planets, metal-rich stardust compactions, have chemistry giving a wealth of reactions. There's carbon aplenty. It's the strangest of things, the neutrality of long chains and rings. A CO2 blanket effects heating control, seen the potent thermal greenhouse-like role. And then there is water, a flood of surprises. H-bonding shows wetness. When freezing, it rises. An excellent solvent, high heat capacity, strange curio, or from mind of sagacity. Many planets are like this, but we know only one. Is Earth a mere oddball as it orbits the sun? It formed as hot desert, was asteroid pelted, had punishing windstorms, volcanic rocks melted. A speck in a cosmos of haunting dimension, dust of no consequence, why give us a mention? Are there prospects for Earth, roasting, sterile, so grim? It's all of God's doing, we don't know, just ask him.
Beautiful, thank you very much, Graeme. Okay, so let's give it a go as we did for previous stanzas. Let's see what this stanza captures and what thoughts these verses elicit.
Well, I guess one thing is the absolute mystery of what the unformed Earth might be capable of. I mean, it just looks so unpromising. And there's a very active research project looking for planets which are Earth-like. And the numbers are prodigious if you work out how many stars there are and how many will contain planets. Well, all stars seem to contain planets, aren't they, wherever you look at them. But how many are capable of producing life? And no one really knows. But to think that our planet, which formed in such a way, and really you need a planetary scientist to speak of the way in which particles of dust and grit started to congregate and form this little rocky planet. What potential would there be in planets like this, and particularly in ours? And then the other mystery is some of the compounds which are forming. Such remarkable compounds. Carbon and water, carbon as an element and water as a compound. Extraordinary compounds. Carbon is the only element which can form long chains, such as you have in lipids and fats, and in rings, in benzene rings, and in other complex biological molecules. And water is in itself a mystery. Water is capable of so many surprising things. And it's just it's amazing just to look at the potential, the promise that has come out of our randomly formed rocky little planet. I guess the one thing that strikes us is how little we know, of course. And especially me as a non-terrestrial scientist, I know very little, but even a terrestrial scientist would just marvel at the potential in early Earth.
Yeah. It's amazing, you know. I was listening to you and also revisiting some of your verses. Once again, I have this sense of reading, I don't know, like a paraphrase, call it a scientific paraphrase of Genesis 1. In this case, again, perhaps sort of a return to the second verse of the first chapter of Genesis, where everything in that tohu vabohu, as the Hebrew text has it, you know, that chaotic landscape prepares elements that are part and parcel of the geology of our planet, but also inherent to our very nature. And you look at this this text of yours, and you realize that there are some hints. At least that's how I read it. There are some hints, some arrows pointing towards life. It's geology, it's chemistry, of course, but all these seems to point somewhere. Random is just a word by which we try to capture something that we still don't understand. And I don't know if we had this discussion. Maybe we did. I keep forgetting stuff. Yeah, well, and one of the things that I admire about certain sectors of the current scientific culture is a kind of humility. Up until recently, you know, we kept hearing people, you know, we still do. A plus B makes C, or 1 + 1 is 2 or 4, whatever. My maths. But it was something, you know, they presented everything as though it's something simple, you know. But we could go to our kitchen and whip up some sugar and something, flour, and there you have it. That's life on Earth. Whereas now I realize more and more, especially via popular science, that there's a sense of humility, of restraint. There's a lot of unknown out there, regardless of how much we manage to find out through experiment, discovery, inspiration, theorizing, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of unknown. Of course, I have a friend who keeps reminding me that I shouldn't go there, you know, make room for the God of the gaps and stuff like that.
Oh, indeed, yes.
I'm not into that kind of stuff.
No.
I'm not planting God where we don't find today an explanation. I'm just pointing out the fact that there is so much unknown that everything can be reconsidered, and perhaps should be reconsidered, perhaps from a rather philosophical point of view. And what we called so far random events, happenings, and so on and so forth, you know, might be part of something deeper. Like in chaos theory, which was so influential and I think inspiring in the 80s, 90s. There's some underlying, undergirding structure that makes possible these random events once again in a constructive way. At least that's how I read it. Do I teleologize too much at this stage, Graeme?
No, I think not. I think the one class of scientists who are not humble are the materialists, who say if it's not matter, then it's nothing. And so beauty, purpose, mind, all of these become mere epiphenomena of matter. That quite sets aside what we see in history and God's revelation in history. But even when we look at matter, we see matter is capable of such incredible potency that matter is, it's so easy to see that matter is the carrier of purpose and of other non-physical realities, which certain people are able to discard and forget about. I mean, I think matter is just thinking of you know, even the miracle of water.
Yeah.
Why there should be such a thing. And of course, Fred Hoyle, when he found out how carbon is made in the centers of stars, he said it really looks as if some super intellect has monkeyed with the physics.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, that's he never became a Christian, so it doesn't prove anything, but it really helps one to think that there is a potential in matter which points beyond itself. I mean, John Polkinghorne, this great late Christian scientist, said, science points beyond itself. And I think we need to look beyond the matter to put it in a personal context.
I was looking also at the verses. I don't know if you can see them on your screen. The second and the third that are visible now on the page. You refer to this another happening, fortunate location of the Earth in the Goldilocks zone.
Right.
The zone that is propitious for life. And you point out the fact that there are many planets out there that are Earth-like. But so far, we were unable to detect signs of life, even though we can find the components, the chemical components of life. You know, we can detect those, but we are yet to identify life itself. And one of the things that you mentioned there is the fact that, well, we have a layer of ozone. This is something that filters somehow cosmic radiations, including from our mighty neighbor, the sun. And we get the right conditions for life to emerge. Happenstance, providence, both, it doesn't matter. But the thing is that the Earth is not only located at the right distance from the star, from the sun, but it also is equipped with certain layers, something like shields. And I would add here something that really amazes me, the magnetic shield, which apparently planets like Mars or Venus don't have. Who put the shield in place? Again, happenstance? Is it a random occurrence? Maybe yes, but maybe someone else, as you suggested in a previous stanza, someone else was able to use that to our advantage. Again, this isn't science, of course, but even when we say there's no God to speak of, that's not science either. So we can look at the same events, we can look at the same facts, and the facts are, yes, we are in the Goldilocks zone, we have a layer of ozone, we have a magnetic shield, and so on and so forth, so many other, well, occurrences that apparently conspired towards life and our existence as thinking reads on Earth.
That's right.
And it's how we interpret the facts Are you of the view that the facts can be and should be interpreted according to, let's say, the worldview of a certain group? I, for one, contemplate this as a legitimate possibility. There's an atheist or an agnostic community or communities look at the same facts and see nothing, just, well, fortunate occurrences. And I see believers of all sorts, belonging to more or less traditional forms of expressing their faith, but they see something else. Coincidence leads to a different perception of reality, where coincidence isn't just that. It might fit in the pattern, a pattern that structures things, or at least takes advantage of these happenstances.
Yes, again, we, as I think it comes up later, doesn't it? We talk about happenstance, but it's in the context of order, of lawfulness, of a given potentiality. And have we mentioned this previously? How John Polkinghorne has said, when we talk about chance and necessity, chance is a gift of freedom. Necessity is God's gift of order. So they are both God's gifts. A universe of chance only would, well, it wouldn't be a universe, it would just be a mess. A universe of order would be frozen. I mean, the only place where you have absolute order is at minus 273 degrees Kelvin. Everything is frozen solid. Yeah. But we live in this amazing interplay of chance and necessity, of freedom and order. And John Polkinghorne said, these really speak to us as God's twin gifts, beautiful, which make our lives possible and which have made the universe so productive. Yeah. So there's no knockdown argument here, but it's so compatible with the idea that the whole is held in being and has purpose from its creator.
Indeed. And asteroids, windstorms, volcanic eruptions, and so on and so forth, all these natural events seem to fit in the same schema. And while, again, from a distance, they cause destruction against the wider backdrop, this tapestry of purposefulness and structure and order, they seem to be doing their job. Yes. Again, conspiring towards the existence and flourishing of life on Earth, including our own. And this, it's like something that, draws the curtain away from this wonderful mystery of things that from a distance don't make sense and seem dangerous and threatening and undermining order in life and so on and so forth. But on the other hand, we realize that behind this curtain there's something else. There's a will that makes all these tesserae, fall together where they should and create this beautiful mosaic of the earth as a home for us, or as St. John Chrysostom, the Golden Mouth, poetically noted somewhere in his homilies on Genesis, mother and tomb for us.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But it's home. It's home. Yeah.
Yes. I think I mentioned from my colleague Dr. Zachary Arden the amazing I guess at face value a coincidence, that the physics of stars produce light, the main radiations in the visible part of the spectrum. The biochemistry of life responds, is energized by that same bandwidth. That if the sun, if the physics of stars put out mainly ultraviolet light, everything would be frazzled. You'd have lots of reactions, but nothing. If it was mainly in the infrared, water would be nice and cozy and warm, but there's no chemical reactions. So just the fact that stars like our long-lived sun produce mainly visible light, why should that be the very energy source which sustains, which is so readily converted into chemical energy and supporting life? It really is a delightful pointer to an overarching mind.
Indeed. There's a rationality that transcends this universe, as
Yes.
John Barrow had it. Yeah, I love that expression. You know, there's something irreducible to the processes of nature, but something that it's still embedded in everything that happens in nature. A rationality, he said, that transcends the physical universe. And John Barrow, you know, great astrophysicist, mathematician, cosmologist, he died a few years back.
Yes, and he was a Christian as well. So he could see the spiritual truth behind it.
So the question that you have there rhetorically towards the end of the stanza has, from the viewpoint of a Christian worldview, positive answer. You know? Are there prospects for earth, roasting, sterile, so grim? And you say, well, it's all of God's doing. We don't know. Just ask him.
Right.
Well, let's see how the poem proceeds further. Organic chemistry.
Okay, we're getting closer to home. And I must say, I used to work in the cancer lab with chemists, like medicinal chemists. And if a reaction didn't work and they just got a black mess in the bottom, they'd call it an intractable tar. And that's what they tipped out and cleaned their glassware and started again. So that's how it comes up here. Carbonaceous chondrites, a class of shooting star, shows Earth with hydrocarbons, intractable tar, and amino acids from interstellar space, pyrogenic compounds from some cosmic cooking. Planet Earth, a trash can littered with amorphous junk. Is there any usefulness for aromatic gunk? On the Earth's steep seabed by hot volcanic vents, organic compounds form endothermic events. Can there be potential in this organic gloop? Can anything arise from this primeval soup? Precursors to life, prebiotic chemists plead, but they cannot imagine where such crude mixtures lead. No one can describe how to transform random gun into simple animals, metaphor or sponge. From high temperature muck underneath the sea, can the complex components of life come to be? Oh God, is there promise in this gooey thick crud? No one else could have schemes for organic laced mud. Yes, I'm perhaps waxing a little bit eloquent there and trying to put some crude terms.
Yeah, you know, listening to you and of course having read the poem several times, you know, every time when I get to this stanza, my mind runs back to my Romanian roots, and there was a modern poet during the communist era who had this project. I want to transform the worst words in the language into something that I don't know, rings well and and he did, you know. Tudor Arghezi by his name. You know, he had all this kind of stuff, mold and gunk and all that, you know, becoming, I don't know, something that through the alchemy of poetry, you know, you can express beautiful ideas. In this case, you have transformed the whole, you know, gooey, gloopy, and so on and so forth,
Gunk and junk,
reality
yes.
of primordial earth into the promise of something.
That's right. Well, we see it again and again in Christian theology, don't we? Years ago, there was a song which we sang regularly in church, something beautiful, something good. All my confusion, he understood. All I had to offer him was brokenness and strife. But he made something beautiful of my life. So God takes what is very crude raw material. We see it in the church. We see it in Israel. And from that, he creates beautiful things, new and greater things, as my professor of theology said. Takes what is unlovely and transforms it into what is beautiful. And in that I find incredible comfort, because I see in myself very crude raw material indeed. The same God is transforming that crude material.
It's again, this time round, it's like Genesis 2, you know. We have that powerful metaphor of the human being made of dust of the earth, or in the rendition of Prophet Isaiah, of clay. Well, this is precisely this chemistry that is, I don't know, smelly and doesn't look good, and so on and so forth, that leads to the appearance, the rise of something that is really noble, according to our standards at least. I believe that when a believer reads this stanza, realizes that, well, we come from this. We come from this, and we are the outcome of all these processes. These processes, perhaps to an extent, still happen, still unfold within our nature, within our bodies. But it's still the same kind of, not an arrow of time, but an arrow of purposefulness that makes all this stuff aggregate, become something like what Clement of Alexandria said in the 2nd century, out of that mud, out of that dust, living statues of the Logos.
Right. Yes, that's an amazing paradox, isn't it? Continuous with the dirt, but bearing the likeness of God.
So is there anything, I don't know, shameful about this kind of humble origin? Am I wrong when I say that most Christians would shun this kind of idea of our origins? What's your take, Graeme?
Yes, I think they would. Going forward in the poem a little bit, thinking about evolution, I guess this is a little out of place, but people would have said, I didn't come from an ape. I didn't come from an ape. There's hubris there. There's I'm too special, but we have. And so what I am by God's grace. And moreover, the question I delight in, am I just a glorified ape? Yes, I am. Biologically, I'm an ape. Theologically, in Christ, I am glorified. So we combine in ourselves the base raw material and God's glorious vision of producing beings like his son. So there is no room for hubris. I am what I am by the grace of God. And may the grace that he gave me not be without effect. May I rejoice in the crudeness of what I'm made from, and the purpose of what God will transform that into.
I love this idea that you just outlined. These thinking reads, purified apes, and so on and so forth, are ashamed of humble origins like the dust of the earth or the goo and what you described in the stanza, but we don't realize that someone which is way above our pay grade did just that, taking us as his ancestors, because we are his ancestors. We are the apes. Yeah, we are the goo. We are the mud.
Yes.
And he became one of us to continue the process of transformation.
Yes, that's right.
This is amazing.
It is amazing. It is amazing. It's mind-boggling. What no one could ever imagine is the very thing that God has purposed for those who love him. That's from Ephesians chapter 2 or 3. Yeah. What no one could have imagined is the very thing that God has planned.
Do you reckon that this is why the ancients, the antecedent cultures resisted the idea of incarnation? They could not conceive of a God that could be God and still embrace this kind of madness of ours.
Well, you're the expert on the ancients, but presumably that's why many of the Greek schools just looked upon our physicality as deeply inferior. The body was a prison for the soul. And for Plato, for the soul to escape from the body and get to the heaven, or for the Gnostics, was the highest of the greatest good. So that's very interesting, isn't it? Yes, many of the ancient Greeks would have been appalled at this idea that so much of our constitution is seemingly inferior.
Yeah.
But as Christians, we're happy to accept that.
Yeah, well, but this is, again, well, to use your word, paradox, because many Christians actually refuse the same idea. Well, perhaps not in regard to the incarnation, but they refuse the idea that we come from that, thinking like the ancients, that we are nobler than that. But then they don't look at the outcomes, at least logical consequences of the incarnation. The incarnation is he who is above all things becomes this stuff.
Yes.
So
the incarnation is itself scandalous.
Yeah. So no reason for us to be ashamed of humble origins, whether it's an ape or a snail or a kangaroo or a kiwi or a dust of the
gunk.
Gunk. No reason. Yeah. So, well, of course, we are paving the way now for your discussion about evolution. But yeah, what's the reason why do Christians refuse the idea of this divine process of transfiguration of that gunk, of that smelly stuff that is us, why do they resist it? Why do they resist the idea of God working through the humility, not only of Israel, but the humility of our very constitution as earthlings? I can't understand this. And so this is why I find your poem so inspiring on many levels, you know, eye-opening, because it shows that we can communicate the essence of our faith in a God that works through the humble things of the earth, you know, via the language of biology, chemistry, evolutionary biology, and so on and so forth. And it's the same faith, just communicated under a different guise, a different language. The primal testament, to use your metaphor, not necessarily the Old or the New Testaments.
But it's the same pattern.
Yeah. And
New from old.
Yeah. New from old.
The unanticipated from the old. I mean, who could anticipate through Israel's tragic history that the climax, the goal, would be God in human flesh? Certainly Jesus, most of Jesus' contemporaries, they couldn't understand it. As we talked about last time when we said, you know, Jesus said you read Moses because you think that will give you life, but this Moses speaks of me, and they just couldn't see it.
You know, it's mind-blowing. I think, well, I must have said this already, maybe during our first conversation, but I think we are stupider than our predecessors in the faith. They seem to be so open to the culture of their time. Amazingly so. They were able to communicate the same, let's call it theological message about God's love towards us under so many guises: Stoic cosmology, Platonic anthropology, whatever, Aristotelian physics, and so on and so forth. We have signs of all that in the New Testament, for example. Yeah, let alone the broader pool of early Christian studies. And they were so open to the culture of their time because they wanted to communicate to their contemporaries the message of the gospel in ways that made sense to those contemporaries. But we today, we stick to a certain antiquated idiom. We hold on to it as though that's the message of God. And we don't realize that in so doing, we miss so many opportunities to reach out and, you know, move people to think, oh, wow, all this humility, that humility of my condition and everything that happens on earth and in the cosmos that drives me to agnosticism, atheism, pessimism, and so on and so forth. All these can be seen from a different angle, but no one told me before.
Do you think we are too influenced by one of our environmental chains of thinking, and that's the Enlightenment? That anything other than matter is just an epiphenomenon.
Yeah.
Well, I think we touched upon this last time too, didn't we? But yeah.
It is, and this kind of positivism, enlightenment mentality is what drives most people to agnosticism and atheism, and in many instances, actually, pessimism, which has a lot of impact upon the human psyche. But then, you know, Christians, by choosing not to talk to these people, the children of the Enlightenment, in a language that these children of the Enlightenment can understand, Christians miss opportunities. And also they sort of isolate themselves ideologically, I think, in an ivory tower of purism and holiness and so on and so forth, and they get less and less realistic about life. And I think everyone loses.
Yeah. Yes, I think we need true piety, but not pietism. We need to certainly interact, I mean, with the realities of life around us, that the things which are being discovered, and take them all on board as part of our biblical Christian worldview.
Shall we move on? One more? What
One
do you
more.
reckon?
Yes,
Yeah.
okay.
I try to take as much advantage of your kindness as possible. Cells.
Right.
Biology, your turf.
Okay, yes, we're getting closer to something I'm familiar with. There's a long word in there, phosphodiesterase. That's an enzyme which breaks down chemical bonds involving phosphate. So I'll just read this. I hope it makes sense. But yes, I haven't tried to simplify it because I like playing with words. So we get to this amazing question. Could cells assemble by unimagined processes in hot, fuming darkness, undersea recesses, with metals and sulfides to us highly toxic as chemotroph feeders where all is an ox? Start with an RNA world that has been opined. Genetics and catalysis are here combined. But RNA's primary ribosome function is phosphodiesterase like self-destruction. Life is a marvel, even when prokaryotic. A marvel compounded endosymbiotic when free-living parents formed eukaryote cells with specialized interdependent organelles. Acellular polymers randomly gelling to self-regulation, no scheme is compelling. The perplexities truly are far from surmounted. The gaps in our knowledge as yet can't be counted. Empirical science needs a hypothesis base, a plausible route through possibility space. Could life come by pure chance? Near impossible odds without natural laws from a mind that is God's. If means God ordained to transform junk to what's living, our only response can be gobsmacked praise giving. So I read a few reviews when I was writing this poem. And I have the impression that although a lot of brilliant chemistry has been done, really there's no more agreement on how life could have arisen from prebiotic compounds than there was 20, 30, 40 years ago, maybe. Again, lots of interesting science. But there are still different schools of thought, and there's certainly no predominant paradigm which is emerging.
Were they able to, sorry to interrupt you, were they able to replicate, because I remember reading in the 80s, 90s, that, well, in theory, we can replicate the processes that led from anorganic to organic and life.
Yes, that's replicable. Yes, certainly. You can get amino acids, you can get simple sugars, you can get carbon chains. In fact, I think I've quoted it somewhere in this poem, a comment from Professor Conway Morris, that there's naphthalene out there in space. He says space has a little bit of the smell of mothballs. So there are lots of interesting chemicals out there. But how they can become large molecules is not generally understood. And we may one day understand how. And that's where my last shot is at the end of this stanza. If one day there is a route discovered from prebiotic gunk to the first cell. So there are three options people may come out with. The atheist will say, there you are, it's all natural, we don't need a God. And certain conservative, socially conservative Christians will say, oh, the science can't be right because God must have done it miraculously. But if this pathway is ever known, is ever found out, as a Christian, I will say, wow, that mechanism, that thin route through possibility space, it is just so amazing. This universe is more wonderfully constituted than we could ever have imagined. And it will elicit worship from me. I don't think I'll live to see it. I'd love to think so. How, through possibility space, the first cells could arise, or the first macromolecule, the first protein, 30 amino acids even, if that's what happened. We don't know. Let's stay humble. But let's say if we find out, it will be exhilarating. It will be praise-inducing in the highest.
A real glance into the mind of God, since the natural laws come from that mind.
That's right. That's right. And I think Christians are often very slow to acknowledge that. They also speak as if natural laws, discussion of natural laws, led you down to naturalism.
Yeah.
Well, it may if you postulate no God. But if you are a believer in God, the natural laws are simply our codification of the order that God has imposed upon his creation. They are simply our codification of God's wise, faithful, rational upholding of matter. So to us, laws are not naturalistic, but they point to the God from whom nature comes.
They belong to the natural realm.
Yes.
But their origin is not there.
No, it's the origin is in mind.
Yeah, I remember discussions when I was an undergrad. See, I still remember some stuff. Not only you, it's not only you grateful, expressing gratefulness to your teachers. I was an undergraduate sitting in in the class of one of the brightest people I have ever met. My professor of systematic theology, and also my doctoral mentor, Dumitru Popescu by his name. And he was talking to us of things that were really above our understanding most times. But anyway, at some point he mentioned two ways of looking at the natural laws. One was that of Augustine, the Western Latin theologian of 5th century, where these laws, which he referred to as reasons or rational patterns, somehow appear to be autonomous from the mind that engendered them, as though thoughts can exist independently from the thinking mind. On the other hand, he said 7th century Byzantine monk Maximus the Confessor, who believed that these laws, rational principles, whatever to call them, patterns that establish order out of chaos, are never separated from the mind of God. And as a matter of fact, Maximus has a very important, let's call it, cosmological chapter in a book called usually ambigua, the ambigua, or ambiguities about nature, theology, whatever. And in chapter 7 there, he talks about two ways of looking at this tandem, this connection between the laws of nature and the mind that engenders these thoughts, these laws. And he says, well, it's actually the same kind of thing, but you look at this thing or this situation from two different angles. You can look at the laws from the angle of the mind of the logos who engenders them, and you see the unity of things. And then when you look at or look towards the logos through the lens of these many principles, laws, and so on and so forth, you see the diversity of God's intentions in regard to the universe. But the big difference, my professor would say, was that for Augustine, these patterns are independent from God's mind. In Maximus, they aren't. And I believe, coming back to your last point, I believe that the sense that many modern people have, secular and otherwise, that the laws exist by themselves and are therefore naturalistic or subject to a naturalistic interpretation, has something to do with this cultural history of the West, with Augustine believing that these rational principles, these laws, no longer exist in connection with God.
Strange, yeah. I wonder why he said that.
I cannot answer that. I'm honestly not familiar with Augustine. I just wanted to show that I remember one of my professors.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, what you capture here, you know, is this, again, paradoxical, to use your word, paradoxical situation. And earlier in the stanza, you mentioned this phosphodiesterase.
Phosphodiesterase, yes.
Diesterase,
Right.
self-destruction, you know. So the same processes that we identified earlier in the broader nature, the world of chemistry, the world of geology, in the cosmos, the physics of the stars last time in our discussion, the same kind of processes that from a distance undermine order and existence or ordered existence, in reality turn positive and become constructive. Am I reading this the wrong way, or is this?
I think with RNA, it's just a mystery, because RNA is a molecule that can both store genetic information and also acts like a protein to orchestrate catalysis. So people have said maybe RNA came first because that can do both. But RNA is unstable. That's the problem. It breaks itself down. That's why the genetic material is DNA. Yeah. Deoxy. It's DNA has one less oxygen, which makes it more stable. RNA, which would be the first to come probably, it breaks itself down. So there's something to go for the hypothesis, something against the hypothesis. So some people still believe RNA was the first molecule to come. Other people say, no, it's too unstable. The conditions you need are too specific. So it remains a big question mark. And I'm not a chemist. I won't make a vote either way, but it's just a fascinating issue of how, yeah, we can't see the direction in which these molecules could go.
So there's a principle of uncertainty in building.
Oh, there's a huge uncertainty here. Yes, huge uncertainty. Yeah.
and out of this uncertainty, you know, like out of all that dung and smelly stuff, you have this tremendous power, which is the life of a cell, you know.
Well, that's right. A prokaryotic cell is like a bacterium. Prokaryotic, it means it's too simple, it hasn't got a nucleus. And then different prokaryotic cells that appeared, they got into an endosymbiotic relationship. One started growing inside the other. And so they collaborated. And then in time, the ones inside became a nucleus or a mitochondrion or a chloroplast. And now it's not questioned that our sorts of cells, we are eukaryotes. We have a fully formed nucleus and other organelles inside the cell. They originated in deep time from free-living bacteria, which started to live inside another one. And then their functions became specialized. And that was proposed by somebody called Lynn Margulis about 40 or 50 years ago, perhaps. I remember, in fact, you know, when this was a new idea, a new hypothesis. And again, something that you couldn't predict. No one had really thought of it. And when Lynn Margulis said chloroplasts and mitochondria are probably the descendants of free-living bacteria in the very first cells, it just seems too weird to believe.
So life is indeed symbiosis.
Symbiotic at its, yes, our cells descended from symbiotic relationships between free-living precursors.
I mean, because in cosmology, there's this beautiful idea that everything is synergetic. All things hold
Working together.
all things work together, build each other,
Yes.
with whatever proportional destructions in the process, and so on and so forth. But the end result is construction, complexity, further organization, and so on and so forth. So the same kind of cosmic processes of synergy are replicated within us through these symbiotic relationships, interactions between bacteria and all these.
It's as if our cells are a trinity of persons, of precursor cells. We can't. They are still separate. They're distinguishable, but they form a single reality. And to me, as a pathologist, something particularly fascinating. When bacteria make proteins, they put an N4-mile group on the end, which is just something that bacteria do. So when we're infected by bacteria, the N4-mile group is recognized by our immune system, and boom, you have an inflammatory response, protected. Now, the interesting thing is our mitochondria make proteins with an N4-mile group, which demonstrates their bacterial origins. But if you bash yourself with a hammer or break a bone, so cells break, then those mitochondrial N4-mile proteins are released. And the body, the immune system, sees that just as if it were a bacterial infection. And so, boom, if you injure yourself, there's an inflammatory response, which is the beginning of healing. So there's still bacterial chemistry going on whenever we injure ourselves, even sterile injury. Fascinating world.
Yeah, now I realize why most of your stanzas end on a doxological note.
Well, of course.
Our only response can be gobsmacked praise giving.
That's right. Indeed.
This is amazing.
Yeah, that's right. You rightly questioned the God of the gaps. But the thing is, the more we know, I think the more we are entitled to say we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And we are entitled to worship the God who stands behind it all.
And this is the good news. This is the gospel of your primal testament, isn't it?
Yes, yes, yes. It's the same God who works.
It's it speaks to us about the same God of the better known testaments.
Yes.
But it takes a bit of effort on our part to decipher the alphabet, isn't it?
Indeed.
And
Yes.
we need the various sciences to read that text.
Yes, the ever-working God. Yeah. Yeah.
It's amazing. It's beautiful.
Yes, I think so.
It is. Praise the Lord. Thank you very much, Graeme, for
Thank you, Doru.
exciting conversation. And I hope that our friends, our viewers will enjoy it as much as I did.
Thank you. Well, I hope I say what would stand up in front of a physicist or a chemist.
Imagine me in front of a theologian. Yeah.
Well, you are one. Thank you, Doru.
Thank you.